A single dad takes the stage to help his daughter at a small-town talent show and aware that one of the judges is a world-famous music producer who sees more than just talent in him. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The morning sun stretched lazily across the rooftops of Willow Creek, gilding the town in a soft amber glow. It was the kind of light that made even the worn-out bricks of Main Street look like something out of a painting. Michael Adams stood beneath the rusted awning of Adams Auto, a steaming mug of gas station coffee cradled between his hands. The scent of motor oil clung to him like a second skin, and his faded blue coveralls bore the kind of stains that told a story of long hours, stubborn engines, and honest work. Inside the office, Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, sketching in her notebook while humming a tune under her breath. She always came to the garage after school since she was old enough to walk. Michael didn't have the luxury of babysitters or after-school programs. Instead, Lily had grown up with socket wrenches and spark plugs as her toys, her world orbiting around the steady rhythm of her dad's labor. Michael took a sip of coffee and leaned against the doorway, watching her. She had her mother's eyes soft and bright, like sunlight through glass. There were days when looking at her made his chest ache with both love and longing. Anna had been gone for 5 years, and still, some mornings he reached for her before remembering she wasn't there. He pushed the thought away. There wasn't time for grief, not with rent due and 3 cars waiting in the back lot. "Dad," Lily called, not looking up from her drawing. "Did you sign the form for the school talent show?" His brow furrowed. "What form?" she groaned dramatically, flopping onto her back. "The one I put on the fridge, the one I reminded you about, twice." He chuckled. "You know your dad's memory's about as sharp as a butter knife." Lily rolled her eyes, but there was a smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "Well, I'm signing us up. You're performing with me." Michael blinked. "Me? You promised, remember? If I was brave enough to sing in front of people, you'd do it with me." He stared at her, coffee forgotten, heart already racing. "Lily," he began, but she only grinned, turning back to her sketch pad. "You'll be great. You always are." And just like that, it was decided. The garage was quiet, save for the ticking of a cooling engine and the occasional creak of the old building settling into dusk. Michael wiped his hands on a shop rag, the grease smearing but never truly leaving his calloused fingers. The last car of the stubborn 4 Camry, with a misfiring cylinder, was finally squared away. He stood in the middle of the garage, surrounded by tools and silence, the kind of stillness that made memories echo louder than they should. In the back room, behind a shelf stacked with dusty air filters and cracked headlight covers, there was a weathered guitar case. He hadn't opened it in years, but he knew it was still there, like a ghost he wasn't quite ready to let go of. His feet moved before he made the choice to follow, almost like the memory had more say than he did. He knelt, pulled the case free, and laid it gently on the workbench. The latches clicked open with a sound that felt like a sigh. The guitar inside was nothing fancy-scuffed. The wood, a little faded, but it had once meant everything. He ran his fingers across the strings, each one whispering a different version of the man he used to be. Before Lily, before Anna, before life had carved deep lines into his hands and turned dreams into burdens. Michael plucked a chord. It rang out, soft but clean. His thumb moved instinctively to the next, then another, building into a slow rhythm, the same one he used to play on Sunday afternoons when Anna would dance barefoot in the living room, laughing like the world couldn't touch them. He stopped, throat tight. He hadn't just played, he had written. Songs scribbled in the margins of invoices and napkins, lyrics about small towns, second chances, and the kind of love that held you together even when everything else fell apart. Once upon a time, people had told him he had something. A voice, a soul, a story worth singing. But dreams didn't pay heating bills. Songs didn't raise a child. He strummed one last time, the chord hanging in the air like a held breath. Then he closed the case and turned out the lights. The kitchen table was a mess of cereal bowls, homework sheets, and half-finished drawings when Michael finally sat down with his cup of lukewarm coffee. The early morning chaos was nothing new. Lily had a way of turning every weekday breakfast into a colorful storm, but something was different today. A bright pink flyer was stuck to the fridge with a smiley face magnet, fluttering slightly whenever the heater kicked on. "Talent show this Friday," it read in big glittery letters. Beneath it, in Lily's unmistakable handwriting, someone had added, "Dad plus me equals Doot." Michael squinted at it. "You signed us up?" Lily looked up from her bowl of cereal, spoon halfway to her mouth. "Technically, I signed me up, but you promised, remember?" He rubbed a hand over his face. "Lily, that was months ago. I thought you were singing with Emma." "I was," Lily poked at her cereal. "But she dropped out yesterday. Stage fright. So, it's just me now." She paused, giving him her most practiced puppy dog eyes. "Unless you do it with me." Michael leaned back in his chair, heart thudding. "Sweetheart, I haven't sung in front of people since." "Since Mom?" she finished softly. "I know." Her voice was gentle, not pushing, just hopeful. "But you still sing in the garage. And you're really good, Dad. Like, really good." He looked away, the sudden rush of memory threatening to drown him. He could still see Anna, on their old porch swing, clapping and laughing while he strummed and sang under the stars. Music had been a thread that wove them together, back when life had felt fuller, lighter. He shook his head, trying to ground himself. "It's not that simple." Lily slid her bowl aside and reached for a stack of sticky notes on the table. She scribbled something and pressed it to his coffee mug. "You promised." He read the note, then looked into her eyes so full of trust and quiet courage. He didn't say yes, not yet. But he didn't say no either. And Lily, ever the optimist, took that as a win. The garage smelled like motor oil, pine-scented air fresheners, and a little bit of yesterday's coffee. Tools hung on pegboards in no particular order. Rags were crumpled in corners, and the old radio on the shelf still flickered with static between classic rock and country. It was cluttered, chaotic-hand, the most familiar place in the world to Michael. He sat on an upturned milk crate, guitar in his lap, watching Lily pace nervously between toolboxes. She had a notebook in hand, its cover decorated with glittery stickers and marker doodles. In the margins of the lyrics she'd chosen, she'd drawn stars and little musical notes. "So, we're really doing this?" he asked, already knowing the answer. Lily nodded quickly. "We have to practice if we want to sound amazing." She flipped the notebook toward him. "I picked a song we both know." Michael chuckled as his eyes scanned the page. It was an old folk tune suite, simple, full of heart. One he used to hum to her at bedtime when she was small enough to sleep on his chest. It hit him like a soft jab to the ribs. "Good choice," he said quietly. Lily climbed onto an overturned tire beside him, clutching a plastic hairbrush like a microphone. "I'm ready." He gave the strings a slow strum, adjusting the tuning as the chords settled into the air. The first notes rang out across the garage, blending with the smell of grease and the faint winter chill leaking through the cracked window. Lily joined in, her voice light and airy, just a little off-key but strong with effort. Michael added harmony, low and smooth. His voice hadn't been used much in years, but muscle memory kicked in. And something else too, something buried deeper. Something that tugged at him like a long-lost piece sliding back into place. They made it through the first verse before Lily burst into giggles. "That was so good!" she beamed. "Did you hear that? We sound like a real team." Michael smiled despite himself. "We do, don't we?" She nodded, eyes bright. "Told you we'd be awesome." And as they ran through the song again surrounded by old engines and worn wrenches, it felt like maybe, just maybe, the past wasn't the only place his music belonged. The days passed faster than Michael liked. One moment he was plucking chords in the garage, coaxing his voice back to life beside Lily's bright enthusiasm, and the next, he was staring at a circled date on the kitchen calendar that seemed to mock him in red ink. Friday, talent show, 6:30 p.m. He leaned against the counter, coffee cooling in his hand, and stared at it like it might somehow erase itself if he glared hard enough. But it didn't. The date loomed closer with each turn of the wrench, and every bedtime story read. Lily, on the other hand, seemed unfazed. She practiced every afternoon like it was no big deal, humming as she did homework or swinging her legs under the dinner table, tapping out rhythms with her fork. The nerves that gripped Michael didn't seem to touch her. She had the kind of courage that came from innocence, believing the world would clap no matter what, because why wouldn't they? Michael wished he could borrow just a sliver of that faith. He hadn't performed in front of anyone since Anna's funeral. Even then, it was a single song, sung through a cracked voice and a heart barely holding together. Before that, it had been years. Singing had always been something private, something sacred. He used to play for Anna, for Lily as a baby, for himself when the world got too loud, but on a stage? In front of strangers? The thought made his palms sweat. One night, a few days before the show, he sat out in the garage alone. The guitar rested on his lap, untouched. He stared at it like it was a question he didn't know how to answer. The door creaked open. Lily poked her head in. "You okay?" He nodded slowly. "Just thinking." She crossed the room and leaned her head against his shoulder. "We'll be great," she said softly. Michael looked down at her, this brave little girl who believed in him more than he did. "Yeah," he murmured, wrapping an arm around her. "Let's hope so." But inside, doubt curled like smoke, whispering all the reasons he wasn't ready. Friday was coming, and there was nowhere to hide. The multi-purpose room at Willow Creek Elementary had never hosted anyone particularly famous. It had seen PTA bake sales, spelling bees, and one unfortunate incident involving a rogue science project and the fire alarm, but nothing glamorous. So when Mrs. Carter, the school's overenthusiastic music teacher, whispered to the principal that she had pulled a few strings and invited a special guest judge, no one paid much attention. After all, in Willow Creek, special usually meant a retired band director or a cousin who once sang backup in Branson. What Mrs. Carter didn't mention, not even in the staff emails, was that the guest judge had a name recognizable well beyond small-town borders. Isabella Reyes. The Isabella Reyes. If you asked anyone in the music industry, they'd tell you she had the golden ear. The one who discovered breakout artists in dim bars and church choirs. The one whose name showed up in liner notes of platinum albums, tucked neatly between songwriters and producers. She rarely did interviews, even more rarely appeared in public without a plan. But for the next week, she'd be spending time with her older sister's family in town, an escape from the LA madness, she'd said. A detox. That was when Mrs. Carter, who happened to be childhood best friends with Isabella's sister, made her pitch over Sunday dinner. Just stop by the talent show. No pressure. The kids would be thrilled. Isabella had agreed with a shrug, more out of politeness than expectation. It would be a nice distraction. Harmless. Now, tucked in the second row of the folding chair audience in a Willow Creek Elementary auditorium filled with crepe paper decorations and a slightly crooked banner reading "Shine Bright, Superstars," Isabella looked every bit the anonymous guest. Dark jeans, wool coat, her long hair tucked beneath a beanie. Sunglasses perched on her nose, despite the fluorescent lights. No one recognized her yet. That was just the way she liked it. She glanced at the program in her lap, scanning the list of acts: baton twirlers, magic tricks, a piano solo from a third grader named Sam. Near the bottom, in shaky handwriting, Lily Adams, guest, Morning Star. She tapped her finger against the name, something about it catching her eye. "Let's see what you've got, Lily," she murmured. The auditorium buzzed with the low hum of excited parents and the shuffling of restless kids, folding chairs, scraping against the linoleum floor in a rhythm only a school talent show could orchestrate. Handwritten programs rustled in nervous fingers. Somewhere backstage, a tambourine clattered to the floor, followed by a whispered, "Oops." Isabella Reyes slipped through the side entrance unnoticed. She moved like someone used to not being seen, despite her fame. The ball cap was pulled low, the dark sunglasses oversized enough to suggest fashion without inviting scrutiny. She wore a charcoal gray pea coat, simple and elegant, and carried nothing but a reusable coffee cup in one hand and the rolled-up program in the other. No entourage, no flash. Just quiet anonymity in a place where no one expected a music mogul to be sitting 3 rows from a papier-mâché rocket ship. She found a seat near the back, wedged between a mom in a puffy jacket and a bored-looking middle schooler picking at a sticker on his water bottle. The chair squeaked under her as she settled in. Her eyes scanned the room, parents checking their phones, siblings swinging their legs. The smell of popcorn drifting faintly from the concession table. It was quaint. This wasn't the kind of venue where stars were born. This was the kind of night meant for polite applause, awkward solos, and proud grandparents who thought everything was amazing no matter what. Isabella had come expecting charm, sweetness, maybe a few decent voices and a laugh or two. She certainly hadn't come expecting that feeling, the one she got in the pit of her stomach when she stumbled across something real. She sipped her coffee, letting her guard down just enough to enjoy herself. The lights dimmed a little. A nervous-looking teacher introduced the first act. A baton slipped. Someone tripped over a microphone cord. Isabella smiled. This was exactly the kind of beautiful mess she hadn't realized she missed. Still, as her eyes drifted to the list of performances, she felt something curious stir when she saw it again. Lily Adams, guest, Morning Star. No grade level, no title like dad or friend, just guest. A question hung in the back of her mind, unformed but persistent. She leaned back in her chair, unaware that one of the most unexpected moments of her career was about to unfold under a string of paper stars. Backstage was a whirlwind of whispered pep talks, glitter-streaked cheeks, and the faint scent of sweat and stage makeup. Kids darted around in homemade costumes, clutching props and cue cards, while teachers tried to maintain some semblance of order with hushed claps and urgent finger-pointing. Michael stood off to the side, just beyond the curtain, staring at the glow of the stage lights filtering through the fabric. His stomach churned, his palms were damp. He clutched his guitar like it might anchor him, but it felt more like a live wire in his grip. He hadn't felt nerves like this in years. Not even in the garage, during their rehearsals, had the panic crept in like this. But now, with the muffled thrum of applause rising and falling just feet away, he felt like a kid about to forget every line in the school play. "You okay?" Lily's small voice broke through the noise. He looked down to find her standing at his side, clutching her sparkly microphone like a talisman. Her eyes searched his face, and without a word, she reached for his hand. Hers was warm and tiny, but the pressure was steady, assured. "Breathe," she whispered, echoing the words he had told her a dozen times before bedtime, before tests, before she had her tonsils out. Michael exhaled, the air shaky on its way out. He nodded. Right. Breathing. She smiled, and in that moment, under the buzzing stage lights and chaos of elementary school excitement, she looked more like Anna than ever. Brave and kind. A quiet strength. "You've got this," she said. "We've got this." The MC's voice echoed from the other side of the curtain. "Next up, please welcome Lily Adams and her very special guest." Michael's grip tightened around the guitar. The curtain began to part. Lily gave his hand one last squeeze before letting go. As they stepped onto the stage, the lights flared, blinding and surreal. The audience was a blur of faces. Michael took his place beside Lily, heart pounding, throat dry. She looked up at him and grinned. "Ready?" He swallowed, nodded once. Then he strummed the first chord, and the music began. The first chord rang out, shaky but true, vibrating through the tiny speakers mounted on either side of the elementary school gym. For a split second, it felt like the air held its breath. Michael kept his eyes on the guitar strings, fingers finding the rhythm like muscle memory was dragging him forward. His heart pounded in his chest, every thump echoing the 1,000 reasons he shouldn't be up there. But then he heard her, Lily's voice, soft but sure, slipped through the mic like morning light through blinds. Clear, honest, and just a little bit trembling. She looked straight ahead, into the crowd, her sparkly microphone clutched with both hands like a lifeline. She wasn't performing, she was sharing. And the gym fell quiet to listen. Michael joined in on the second verse, his voice low, warm, and weathered. It was the kind of voice that carried stories in its edges, the kind that hadn't been heard through speakers in over a decade. Rough around the edges but rich with something deeper. Truth. It caught people off guard. The song wasn't flashy, no belting solos or big key changes, just a gentle, rolling melody about holding on, about starlight in dark places. About being each other's compass when the map runs out. By the chorus, the gym was still. The parents who had been scrolling on their phones now watched with quiet attention. Even the little ones fidgeting in front row seats seemed to settle, drawn in by something they didn't fully understand, but felt anyway. Back in the audience, Isabella Reyes slowly removed her sunglasses. She leaned forward in her seat, elbows on knees, eyebrows knitting together. She wasn't smiling. Not yet. She was listening the way someone listens when something real cuts through all the noise. On stage, Michael and Lily stood shoulder to shoulder, two voices blending into something greater than either could manage alone. When the last note faded, it didn't land like a final bow, it lingered, soft and slow, hanging in the air like a promise. And for just a beat, the room stayed silent. Then came the applause. Not polite, not automatic, earned. The sound of applause rolled through the gym like a wave, sudden, warm, and bigger than anyone expected. Parents stood, clapping louder than they had for any other act. Some wiped their eyes. A few kids who'd been whispering in the back row now sat up straight, watching as Lily beamed and gave a shy little bow. Michael, caught off guard, nodded once in quiet gratitude, the corner of his mouth tugging into something like a smile. But while the room thundered with cheers and the stage lights still glowed, Isabella Reyes didn't move. She sat in the same folding chair, elbows on her knees, hands clasped tight. Her eyes, usually sharp and unreadable, were rimmed with something softer now, wet. Her sunglasses dangled from her fingers, forgotten. It wasn't just the performance. It was him, that voice, that presence, that ache beneath every note. Michael hadn't just sung, he'd lived the song. And whether he realized it or not, he'd bled truth all over that stage. Isabella blinked slowly, her throat tightening. She had sat in countless auditions, flown across the world to scout talent, heard voices that were technically flawless and polished to a shine. But this wasn't about polish. It was raw and real and exactly the kind of thing that couldn't be manufactured in a studio. Her heart thudded, slow and heavy, as Lily squeezed her dad's hand and they made their way off stage. The crowd continued to clap, but Isabella barely registered it. She was still staring at the spot where Michael had stood, guitar hanging from his shoulder like it belonged there more than anywhere else in the world. Something flickered in her chest. Curiosity, yes, but more than that, recognition. A feeling she hadn't let herself believe in for a long time. She didn't know who he was. Not yet, but she would. As the MC called the next act and the lights shifted, Isabella remained still, eyes distant and mind racing. That moment, that songet wasn't going anywhere. It had found her, and it wasn't letting go. By the time the sun crept over the rooftops of Willow Creek the next morning, the glow of the talent show had already faded into a memory for most. Streamers had been pulled down, chairs folded and stacked, and the gym floor swept clean of glitter and candy wrappers. For Michael, Monday morning came like every ethereally, cold and laced with the scent of coffee and motor oil. The garage was quiet except for the distant rumble of a delivery truck and the slow groan of the space heater kicking on. He slipped on his coveralls, rolled his shoulders, and got back to work. If his voice had trembled a little less on that stage last night, or if the crowd had clapped a little harder than usual, he told himself it didn't mean anything. Just a school event, A sweet moment with his daughter, nothing more. "Hey, Dad?" Lily's voice echoed through the garage as she stepped in, backpack half-zipped, breakfast bar in hand. She bounced more than walked, her shoes slapping the concrete like a drumbeat. Michael looked up from the open hood of a Ford pickup. "Morning, Peanut. You get enough sleep?" "Barely," she said, grinning. "I was too excited. Did you see everyone clapping? And that one mom in the front row was crying." "Crying, Dad," he chuckled, wiping his hands on a rag. "Yeah, well, some folks cry when their kid forgets the words. Emotions run high at these things." Lily narrowed her eyes, unconvinced. "Don't pretend it wasn't amazing. You were amazing." Michael shrugged and ducked back under the hood. "It was fine. You were the real star." "But people stood up, Dad," she pressed, climbing onto a stool beside the tool bench. "That doesn't just happen." He tightened a bolt a little harder than necessary. "It was a nice night, Lil. Let's not make it more than it was." Lily tilted her head, studying him. "Why do you always do that?" "Do what?" "Act like good things don't matter." Michael paused, then gave her a small smile. "They do. I just like to keep my feet on the ground." But even as he turned back to the engine, a flicker of the spotlight still lingered somewhere deep in his chest, quiet, warm, and not quite ready to let go. Isabella Reyes sat in the corner booth of Willow Creek's only coffee shop, a chipped ceramic mug growing cold between her hands. Outside the window, the quiet hum of small-town life moved at a pace entirely foreign to her. Teens on bikes, a mailman with a slight limp, a woman walking her golden retriever like it was the most important task in the world. She'd spent her entire career chasing, sound-searching for that rare something that couldn't be taught or replicated. The kind of voice that made you stop mid-conversation, lean in, and feel something. She'd found it in basement bars in Nashville, in subway stations in New York, even in a gospel church in Atlanta. But last night, she found it on an elementary school stage in the middle of nowhere, and she couldn't stop thinking about it. Michael Adams. That was the name she'd heard whispered when the crowd was filing out. No one had said it like he was a mystery, just a guy. A single dad, a mechanic. But Isabella knew better. There was nothing ordinary about that voice. She pulled out her phone again, scanning the school's website for any mention of the performance. Nothing. No clips, no photos. The show hadn't been streamed, and no one had posted videos online yet, so she'd started asking questions. Her sister's neighbor mentioned that Michael ran the garage off Main. "Nice guy," she'd said. "Keeps mostly to himself. Everyone loves his little girl, though." Now, Isabella sipped her lukewarm coffee and stared across the street, where a squat brick building bore a faded sign, Adams Auto. The garage door was open, revealing the shadowy outline of a man under the hood of an old Chevy. She couldn't see his face, but she knew it was him. Her heart beat a little faster, not with nerves, but recognition. She wasn't here to offer him a record deal, not yet. She just wanted to talk. To understand how someone with that kind of talent could be hidden away, changing oil and tightening bolts, in a town where no one knew what they were hearing. She stood, tossed a few bills on the table, and stepped into the cold. It was time to meet the voice she couldn't forget. The bell above the garage door jingled just once, soft and unassuming as Isabella stepped inside Adams' Auto. The scent hit her immediately. Motor oil, old rubber, something faintly metallic and warm, like sun-baked steel. A small radio buzzed somewhere in the corner, half lost in the hum of a running engine. Michael stood over the open hood of a dusty red truck, sleeves rolled up, forearms streaked with grease. He didn't look up right away, just muttered, "Be right with you," and kept working, wrench twisting with a practiced rhythm. Isabella took a slow breath, letting the environment settle around her. No framed gold records, no chrome and glass offices. Just the steady clink of tools and the low thrum of labor. After a beat, Michael straightened and wiped his hands on a rag, finally turning toward her. His eyes met her steady, unreadable, and there was no flicker of recognition. "Afternoon," he said. "Something I can help you with?" Isabella smiled, slipping into character with ease. "Yeah, Actually, my car's been hesitating when I start it. Thought I'd get someone to take a look before I end up stranded." He nodded, already walking toward the lot. "What are you driving?" "White coupe, parked out front." Michael disappeared for a moment, then returned with a small clipboard and a set of keys she hadn't even noticed him take. "I'll check it out. Might be the starter. Could be a loose terminal." "Appreciate it," she said, watching him with quiet curiosity. "You get a lot of walk-ins?" He shrugged. "Enough to keep the lights on." The silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, just tentative. Isabella leaned casually against the counter. "You were at the school talent show last night, right?" she asked, like it had just occurred to her. Michael froze for the briefest second. Then, "Yeah. My daughter roped me into singing with her." "She's got guts," Isabella said. "And you've got a voice." Michael gave a dry smile, turning back toward the truck. "Had one, maybe, once." She tilted her head, studying him. "You ever think about doing more with it?" He looked up, the weight behind his eyes clear. "I used to," he said quietly. "But life had other plans." And with that, he disappeared beneath the hood, once again leaving Isabella more intrigued than ever. The garage was quiet again, the clinking of tools and whir of the fan now replaced by the steady ticking of cooling metal. Michael leaned against the fender of Isabella's car, a wrench still in his hand, though he wasn't really working anymore. He'd checked the terminals, cleaned some corrosion off the battery, tightened a bolt, or nothing serious. Nothing to keep her there, really. But she hadn't left. Isabella stood near the counter, her fingers resting lightly on the edge, watching him the way someone watches a sunrise they didn't expect quietly. Like they might scare it off if they moved too fast. "You really don't remember me?" she asked, her voice soft even. Michael looked up from the engine. "Should I?" She smiled, not offended. "Probably not. I tend to stay behind the scenes." There was a pause. Then she pulled off her ball cap and let her hair fall loose, brushing a lock behind her ear. The sunglasses came next, tucked into her coat pocket. Her eyes, without the barrier, were sharper bright and steady, like they missed nothing. "I'm Isabella Reyes," she said. Michael blinked. The name didn't immediately register until it did. He frowned slightly. "You mean like the producer?" She nodded. "That one." He exhaled, slow. "You're kidding." "I'm not," she said gently. "And I wasn't there last night by accident. Your performance hit different. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. You've got something people don't forget." Michael looked down at his hands. Grease-streaked, rough around the edges, not hands built for stages and spotlight. "I fix trucks. I raise my kid. That's what I do now. And I'm not here to change your life," she said. "Just to ask if you'd come record one song. Just a demo. Nothing fancy. I've got a little studio set up at my sister's place while I'm in town. No contracts. No pressure." He stared at her for a long moment. "Why me?" Isabella met his gaze evenly. "Because the world needs voices that come from somewhere real. And yours does." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was the kind that comes before a door opens, or closes. Michael didn't answer. Not yet. But the idea was there now planted, like a seed he couldn't ignore. The demo offer lingered in Michael's mind, like a song he couldn't turn off quiet at times, then rising in volume when he least expected it. He worked through the afternoon like always, changing brake pads, diagnosing a stubborn rattle, double-checking tire pressure. But his focus kept slipping. Every time he looked at his reflection in the garage window, he didn't see a mechanic. He saw a man standing under stage lights again, holding a guitar, and wondering what the hell he was doing. Isabella had left hours ago, but her words stuck to him like engine grease. He didn't doubt her credentials. The name Isabella Reyes had echoed enough in the back of his mind to confirm the memory interviews, album liner notes, and occasional glimpse on TV. But that was exactly the problem. Michael didn't do glossy. He didn't do opportunity. And he sure as hell didn't do industry charm with a pretty smile and a pitch wrapped in flattery. After locking up for the night, he drove the familiar 2 miles home, his beat-up truck rattling slightly as it climbed the hill. The porch light flickered as he pulled into the driveway. Lily was already inside, probably finishing her homework or elbow-deep in one of her art projects. When he walked in, the scent of macaroni and the low hum of the TV greeted him. Lily looked up from the living room, her eyes bright. "Hey, Dad. How was work?" "Busy," he said, toeing off his boots. "You eat?" "Yep, left you some on the stove." She paused. "That lady come back today?" Michael raised an eyebrow. "What lady?" "The one from the show. The one with the fancy coat." He sighed. "Yeah. She said she's a music producer." Lily's eyes went wide. "Did she want you to sing again?" "She asked me to record something," he admitted, walking into the kitchen. "But I told her I'd think about it." "You're gonna do it right?" Michael stirred the macaroni absently. "I don't know, Lil." She watched him, quiet now. He turned, meeting her gaze. "This world we've built, it works. It's stable. No tours, no drama, no people poking around in our lives." Lily nodded slowly, like she understood even if she didn't fully agree. Michael placed a bowl on the table and sat. He wasn't afraid of singing. He was afraid of losing what he'd worked so hard to protect. The next morning was overcast, the kind of gray that made the whole town feel slower. Rain tapped lightly on the windows as Michael stood at the kitchen counter, stirring sugar into his coffee. The old radio crackled in the background with a country station that drifted in and out with static. Lily padded into the kitchen in her mismatched pajamas, her hair sticking up like a crown of static. She yawned and climbed into her usual seat at the table, a crumpled blanket still draped around her shoulders. "You gonna call her?" she asked, not bothering with a hello. Michael didn't turn around. "Call who?" "You know who," he sighed, taking a sip from his mug. "I told you, Lily. I'm thinking about it." There was a pause, the kind of silence only a 10-year-old could weaponize. Then, "You always say you want me to be brave," she said quietly. "To try things, even if I'm scared." Michael turned, the mug halfway to his lips. She looked at him now, fully awake. "So why don't you?" He didn't answer. He didn't have one that would satisfy either of them. Lily stood and walked over to the counter, reaching up to the fruit bowl where the day's mail usually landed. She rummaged for a second before pulling out a sleek white business card, slightly bent at the corners. She held it out to him like it was proof of something, proof of what he was still meant to be. "I found this in your coat pocket." Michael looked at the card. "Isabella Reyes Music Group. Personal contact." "You weren't even going to tell me," Lily said, softer now. "Were you?" Michael rubbed a hand down his face, weariness tugging at his features. "It's not that simple, kiddo." But Lily held her ground, both hands gripping the card like a lifeline. "Mom would have wanted you to do this." Those words hit deeper than any others could have. They landed like a stone in water, rippling outward, disrupting everything calm he'd clung to. He looked down at the card, then at Lily, then back again. Maybe she was right. Maybe some chances were worth the risk. The studio wasn't what Michael expected. He'd imagined chrome surfaces, blinking lights, and glass walls, a spaceship of sound like the ones you'd see in a documentary about famous producers. But Isabella's setup, tucked behind her sister's farmhouse just outside of town, was warm and understated. A converted barn with high ceilings, string lights hanging like fireflies, and wood panels that smelled faintly of cedar and old summer storms. Inside, cables coiled neatly like sleeping snakes. A vintage upright piano rested in the corner, and a few guitars leaned casually against the walls. There were sound panels, yes, and a sleek mixing board, but none of it felt clinical. It felt lived in, real. Michael stood just inside the door, unsure whether to take off his boots. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice low, unsure. Isabella turned from her laptop, a gentle smile tugging at her lips. "I'm sure. Come in, don't overthink it." Easier said than done. He stepped inside, shoulders stiff, hands buried in his jacket pockets. Every movement felt amplified in the quiet. He glanced at the microphones, the headphones on the stool, the padded booth. "You know," he muttered, "I used to record on a cassette deck in my garage. Had to time it just right to avoid the dog barking next door." Isabella laughed softly. "Then this'll be a step up, but I don't want polish, I want you. The way you sounded on that stage." He swallowed hard and nodded. She guided him gently into the booth, adjusted the mic, and slipped a pair of headphones over his ears. The instrumental track faded in a simple acoustic backing with soft piano underneath. The song they'd agreed on, the one he and Lily used to sing in the kitchen while washing dishes. Michael closed his eyes, breathed in, let the first line rise in his chest, and then he sang. His voice, at first unsure, gained strength with every word. Deep, soulful, unrefined in all the right ways. A voice with dirt under its nails and grief in its bones. Outside the booth, Isabella leaned forward, transfixed. This wasn't potential. This was lightning in a bottle. And the room, every instrument, every panel, every wire seemed to hold its breath to listen. The plan had been one song. Just one. Michael had made that clear when he stepped into Isabella's studio. No contracts, no promises, no strings, just a demo, a trial. A single dip of his toes back into waters he'd long since walked away from. But as the final note of that first song faded into the soft silence of the studio, Isabella didn't speak right away. She sat at the mixing board, fingertips resting lightly on the faders, her eyes on the glass between them. Michael, still in the booth, lowered the headphones and looked at her through the window, uncertain. She pressed the intercom button. One more. Michael blinked. "I thought, I know. Just humor me." He hesitated, then nodded. The second track was slower, moodier. A ballad he'd written years ago, stashed in a forgotten notebook in the garage, beneath a pile of tax documents and spark plug receipts. He'd barely remembered the lyrics until last night, when they came back to him in a rush he couldn't explain. As he sang, Isabella watched him, not just the way he moved or shaped each word, but the way the music seemed to live inside him. He didn't perform so much as relive. Every line felt weathered, worn smooth by time and heartache. When the second take ended, neither of them spoke right away. Michael pulled off the headphones slowly, his breath still catching. Isabella stepped into the booth, clipboard forgotten on the chair. "That one yours?" she asked. "Yeah," he said, suddenly self-conscious. "It's old, rough." "It's brilliant," she said, her voice low. "You've been sitting on this all this time?" He gave a half shrug. "Didn't think anyone would want to hear it." She stepped closer. "I do." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Not electric, not dramatic, just a quiet awareness. They spent the rest of the afternoon playing with chords, layering harmonies, revisiting lyrics Michael hadn't sung in years. By the time the sky outside turned pink with evening, they had recorded 3 songs. What started as a one-time demo had become something else, a rhythm, a spark. And somewhere between the notes, something warmer than music had begun to take root. The invitation came casually, like it was no big deal. "Come by for dinner," Isabella had said, unplugging a cable and winding it with practiced ease. "Nothing fancy, just food, conversation. I owe Lily a thank you for sharing you." Michael had hesitated. He always did. But Lily, unsurprisingly, had jumped at the idea. So now, he stood on Isabella's sister's porch, one hand holding a store-bought pie and the other resting protectively on Lily's shoulder. She bounced on her toes, already peering through the screen door like she couldn't wait to get inside. The door opened before they knocked. "Hey," Isabella greeted, casual in jeans and a loose flannel shirt, hair swept into a soft braid that made her look younger, less polished. "Come in. Shoes off if you don't mind. My sister's a barefoot, on wood floors kind of person." Lily darted in ahead, already chatting about her art project and asking if there'd be dessert. Michael stepped in more slowly, taking in the homey scent of roasted vegetables and warm bread. The dining room was lit by candles, and soft kitchen lights warm, cozy, like a page out of a life he didn't belong to. Dinner was surprisingly easy. Light conversation, Lily doing most of the talking, Isabella listening with genuine interest. There was laughter. Real laughter. And for a few moments, Michael allowed himself to sit back, to enjoy the way Isabella's eyes sparkled when she teased him about singing with a wrench in his back pocket. But as the plates cleared and Lily curled up on the couch with a coloring book, the conversation shifted. Quieter. Closer. "You know," Isabella said, setting down her wineglass, "you could really do this. The music. Not just as a hobby, as a career." Michael tensed, his smile fading just slightly. "That's not my world anymore." "It could be," he shook his head. "I've got responsibilities, a daughter, a life I built that actually works. I can't risk throwing it off balance." She studied him, not pushing, but not backing down either. "What if it's not about risk? What if it's about giving yourself permission to want more?" He didn't answer, just looked over at Lily, lost in her own world, safe and steady. "Thanks for dinner," he said quietly. "We should head out." Isabella nodded, smile gentle but unreadable. Of course. The spark between them hadn't dimmed, but Michael still, clutching the weight of too many yesterdays, wasn't ready to let it catch fire. Not yet. The next time Michael showed up at the studio, the sky was heavy with clouds, threatening rain that never quite came. The air smelled like dust and memory, and something in his step was slower, more deliberate. Isabella noticed it the moment he walked in, shoulders a little tighter, eyes a little distant. He didn't go straight for the booth this time. Instead, he sat down on the edge of the low stage near the back wall, guitar across his knees, fingers motionless on the strings. Isabella watched him from the soundboard, waiting, not pushing. After a long silence he spoke. "I used to think music would be the thing that saved me." His voice was quiet, but it carried. "I was 17 when I wrote my first song, played it for Anna on the hood of my truck right after prom. She said I had magic in my hands." Isabella smiled softly but said nothing. "She believed in it, believed in me, more than I ever did. When we got married, I told her I'd chase the dream, play wherever they'd let me. We made plans, cheap motels, second-hand guitars, open mic nights in cities we'd never seen. She was all in." He paused, the silence pressing closer now. "But then we found out about Lily. And everything changed." His fingers brushed lightly over the guitar, the sound barely audible. "She didn't ask me to stop, but I did. Got a job at the garage. Said it was temporary. Said once things were settled, I'd get back to it." He swallowed hard. "And then, she got sick. Fast. No warning. By the time we realized how bad it was, there wasn't time to go anywhere." His jaw clenched. "I promised her I'd take care of Lily, that I'd keep her safe, keep her grounded. I built a life around that promise. Simple, predictable, no chances." He looked up at Isabella then, eyes lined with something deeper than sadness, guilt, maybe. "Regret. So if I've been cautious with all this, it's not because I don't care." He strummed a single, aching chord. "It's because I still hear her voice in everything I do." And in that moment, Isabella understood. He hadn't given up music. He'd just buried it beneath the weight of love, loss, and the desperate need to protect the one thing he had left. The storm finally broke that night. Tapping gently on the roof of the studio, as if the sky itself had something it needed to say. Rain slid down the tall windows in soft, silver streaks, while inside, Michael and Isabella sat cross-legged on the floor, an open notebook between them. Half a mug of cold coffee forgotten nearby. Neither of them had said much since Michael's confession. The silence wasn't heavy, it was respectful. Full of unspoken things. "I never knew that," Isabella said quietly at last, her gaze fixed on the scuffed hardwood between them. "About your wife." Michael offered a small nod, his fingers idly picking at a loose thread on his shirt sleeve. "Wasn't something I planned to share, just came out. She looked at him then, her expression softer than he'd ever seen it. There was no pity in her eyes, just understanding. Reflection. "Everyone always thinks I have everything," she said, her voice barely louder than the rain. "Big house in L.A., all the right connections, some ridiculous car I barely drive. It looks good, on paper." He tilted his head. "But?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "But I go home at night, and it's quiet. Too quiet. Sometimes I turn on the TV just to hear voices. I've been so focused on building careers, fixing broken contracts, chasing the next sound somewhere along the way, I forgot how to build something for myself." Michael didn't speak, just listened. She leaned back against the wall, sighing. "The other night, watching you and Lily at dinner, it hit me. That kind of bond? That's rare. No paycheck or producer credit can touch it." Michael looked at her then, something shifting in his chest. "It's not always easy." "I don't want easy," she said, eyes locking with his. "I want real." There was a quiet moment between them, not romantic, not charged, just deeply human. "I envy you," she added. "Not your voice, no, even your songs. Just the way Lily looks at you like she knows exactly who you are, and trusts you anyway." Michael swallowed, heart stirring. "She saved me. More than I'll ever be able to explain." Isabella nodded, eyes glistening in the soft glow of the studio lights. "Then maybe it's time you sang like someone who still believes in being saved." The first article appeared late Sunday night, just a short blurb on a mid-tier music blog, buried between festival recaps and celebrity sightings. Isabella Reyes, spotted working with unknown male vocalist in Midwest recording retreat. There were no names, no photos, just enough to stir curiosity among fans and industry watchers who tracked every move she made like hawks circling a spotlight. By Monday morning, it had spread like wildfire. Music insiders began speculating. Was she launching a new artist? Sheltering a burned-out pop star? Or, more scandalously, hiding a romance? And by Tuesday, the storm hit Willow Creek. Michael noticed it first when a sleek black SUV idled outside the garage for over an hour, its windows too tinted to see through. Then came the woman in oversized sunglasses, pretending to browse the gas station snacks while whispering into her phone. And finally, a man with a too-large camera pretending to photograph wildflowers across the street, lens trained straight on the shop. He stepped outside and stared the guy down until he turned and walked away. But the uneasy knot in Michael's stomach only grew tighter. By the time he picked Lily up from school, 2 more cars had followed him home. "What's going on, Dad?" she asked, peering through the back window as they pulled into the driveway. "Why are people taking pictures of your truck?" He didn't have an answer he liked. "I don't know, baby, but we're okay. Don't worry." But he was worried. Later that evening, his phone buzzed with a call from Isabella. "I'm so sorry," she said the moment he picked up. "It wasn't supposed to get out. I don't know who leaked it, but it wasn't anyone on my side." Michael rubbed his forehead, voice tight. They were outside Lily's school. There was silence on the other end. Then, "I'll fix it." He believed she meant it, but that didn't make it better. This wasn't just music anymore. It wasn't studio sessions and quiet duets in the glow of string lights. It was exposure, noise, risk. And Michael had spent too long keeping Lily safe to let the outside world come crashing in now. Even if part of him had started to wonder what life beyond the quiet might look like. The next day, Michael didn't show up at the studio. He didn't call, didn't text. The light rain that had lingered all morning gave way to heavy clouds, low and brooding, and the stillness inside the converted barn only made the weight in Isabella's chest heavier. She had just started shutting down the mixing board when the door flew open with a sharp bang. Michael stood in the doorway, soaked to the shoulders, jaw clenched, eyes dark. "Hey," she said carefully, setting down her headphones. "I was just about to. This isn't what I wanted." His voice cut through the quiet like a snapped string. Isabella froze. I know. I told you, he said, stepping further inside, rainwater dripping from his sleeves. No contracts, no publicity, no circus. He motioned vaguely toward the windows, as if the press were still camped outside in the fog. But now there are strangers parked outside my house, cameras outside Lily's school. I didn't leak anything, Michael. I know you didn't, but your name did enough. The words hung there, heavier than the storm. Isabella's expression softened. I'm trying to fix it. Michael exhaled sharply and turned away, pacing. You don't understand what it's like. I've spent years building something stable for her, safe. No surprises, no chaos. Just routine. That's what keeps her world steady. And now, overnight, there are stories, rumors, God knows what next. You think I don't want to sing again? That I don't miss it? He turned back to her, pain etched into every line of his face. But I'm not some 22-year-old with nothing to lose. I'm a father. And I'm not risking her peace because someone decided I'm a headline. Isabella didn't defend herself. She didn't try to spin it. She just stood there, hands at her sides, absorbing every word. I hear you, she said softly. And you're right to protect her. Michael looked down, his voice lower now. I thought maybe I could dip my toe back in, but this feels like I've already lost control. And with that, he turned and walked out, the door closing behind him with a quiet finality that sounded far too much like goodbye. The studio sat dark for 3 days. No lights in the windows, no guitar hums floating out into the trees. Just silence, deep and still, the kind that settles in after a storm, not because the sky has cleared, but because the wreckage is too fresh to face. Isabella packed her bags on a Thursday morning, early enough that even the nosy tabloid stragglers hadn't taken their usual positions on the curb. She left a note for her sister on the kitchen counter and loaded her car without fanfare. No dramatic speeches. No last visits. There was nothing left to say. Back in L.A., she could disappear into noise and neon and phone calls stacked 3 deep. She could drown herself in other artists, other stories, other projects. And yet when she sat by the window on the red-eye flight home, staring out at the wings slicing through gray skies, she realized something that made her throat tighten. Michael Adams wasn't just a voice. He was a pause she hadn't known she needed. And now, she'd left him behind. Back in Willow Creek, Michael tried to return to normal. The garage was as it always was, rusted bolts, stubborn engines, country music on low volume. He showed up early, worked late, smiled when customers thanked him, made dinner for Lily, checked her homework, folded laundry during commercials. But the silence in the house was louder now. Lily noticed it first. The way he didn't hum while cooking. The way the guitar stayed tucked in its case. The way he stared just a little too long at the studio's phone number, still scribbled on the back of that business card, tucked in the junk drawer beside batteries and old receipts. She didn't say anything. Not yet. But she missed the spark in his eyes when he talked about music. So did he. But in his mind, it was better this way, safer. He'd shut the door on something that could have cracked the world he'd built open. Still, every night when he laid down, the echo of Isabella's voice is soft, patient, lingered in the quiet. And peace, the kind he used to cherish, suddenly felt like something else entirely. Loneliness, dressed in routine. It started with a single posted unlisted YouTube video, uploaded quietly by a junior sound engineer who'd been helping Isabella back in Willow Creek. He hadn't meant to cause a stir. Just wanted to share something beautiful with a few friends, maybe catch the ear of someone who needed it. The title was simple. Unknown Artist, Morning Star. Demo. No names, no credits. Just one track. But within 24 hours, it had spread like wildfire. The comments poured in first. Who is this guy? This voice feels like home and heartbreak at the same time. I'm sobbing in a parking lot. What is this magic? Then the reactions came, duets on TikTok, acoustic covers, even a slowed-down version set to grainy clips of fathers dancing with their daughters. The internet had fallen in love with something raw, something real. The mystery dad, as the fan threads began to call him, became a phenomenon. Music blogs picked it up within days. The return of soul, in an industry full of polish, one headline read. Isabella Reyes' secret masterpiece? Asked another. Speculation ran wild. Was he a washed-up country singer making a quiet comeback? An actor in disguise? A viral marketing stunt? But Michael didn't know any of this, not at first. He was elbow-deep in a brake job when his phone buzzed for the 5th time in an hour. Then it rang. Then it buzzed again. Finally, he yanked off his gloves and checked it. A text from an old friend in Nashville, someone he hadn't spoken to in years. Is this you? Dude, you're everywhere. He clicked the link and froze. It was his voice, his song, his demo. And beneath it, thousands of comments, hundreds of thousands of views. He just stood there in the middle of the garage, the whir of the lift humming behind him. His breath caught somewhere between disbelief and dread. Because the door he'd closed? Someone had kicked it wide open, and the world was listening. The call came on a Wednesday morning, just after sunrise, while Michael was pouring coffee into a chipped mug and trying to shake off a restless night. Lily was still asleep upstairs. The house wrapped in that early hush that always made him feel like things might just be okay. The phone buzzed against the counter. Unknown number. He let it ring once, twice, then picked it up with a sigh. Hello? Michael Adams? The voice on the other end was crisp, professional, but friendly in that practiced way that made alarms go off in his gut. Who's asking? This is Daniel Cross. I'm an A.R. rep with Evergreen Records. We've been following your demo, Morning Star, and I have to say it's one of the most authentic pieces of music I've heard in a long time. Michael didn't say anything, just stared at the coffee swirling in his mug. We'd like to talk, the voice continued, about representation, about releasing a full-length project, if that's something you'd be open to. There's a lot of momentum behind you right now. Your voice, it's cutting through the noise. People are responding. Michael blinked, trying to catch up. You got my number, how? There was a pause. We didn't go through Isabella Reyes. One of our interns traced the video's origin. It led us to your studio's client logs in Willow Creek. From there, it wasn't hard to find your shop's business number. So you skipped the person who produced the track? Let's just say the industry has eyes everywhere, Mr. Adams. Michael's jaw tightened. I didn't put that demo online. I didn't ask for this. I understand, Daniel said smoothly. But the song's out there now, and with or without us, the world is paying attention. All I'm saying is, we can help you shape what comes next. If you want it. He gave Michael his direct number, promised to follow up, then hung up with a final, think about it. Michael set the phone down, heart pounding. For the first time, opportunity hadn't knocked politely. It had barged in, uninvited, and it was sitting at his table, waiting for an answer. It started with a sheet of lined notebook paper and a pink gel pen. Lily sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, tongue poking out slightly in concentration as she wrote, the quiet scratching of her pen the only sound in the room. A soft breeze fluttered the curtains. Outside, the world buzzed with the noise of her dad's sudden fame calls, texts, people showing up to the garage with phones instead of car trouble. And he was different now. Still her dad. Still making breakfast and fixing her bike tire without being asked, but quieter, more distracted. Like his thoughts were somewhere else entirely, she saw the way he looked at his guitar without picking it up, the way he smiled when he talked about music, but only halfway. And most of all, she saw the way he didn't say Isabella's name ever. Like if he didn't speak it, the ache might go away. So Lily decided to do something about it. When she finished the letter, she folded it carefully and tucked it into an envelope. She addressed it in her neatest handwriting, then added a row of stars and a little heart in the corner. She waited until her dad had gone out to take a call on the porch, then slid the letter into the mailbox before he could ask what she was up to. Dear Miss Isabella, thank you for helping my dad sing again. I think it made him remember who he is. He doesn't say it, but I know he misses you. I miss you too. You made us feel like something big could happen. Like good things still find you, even if you're not looking. Please come back, or call, or write, or anything. He won't ask. But I will. Love, Lily P. S. You can still come for dinner. I promise I won't burn the garlic bread this time. She put the flag up on the mailbox and stepped back inside, heart fluttering with a hope too big for her small frame. Because sometimes, when grown-ups were too afraid to say what mattered most, it was up to the kids to send the truth through the mail. The road into Willow Creek was just as she remembered: long stretches of quiet farmland, the occasional rusted sign, and that familiar curve where the trees arched overhead like a gentle reminder to slow down. Isabella had driven this route before, once with curiosity, once with hope. But this time was different. This time, she wasn't chasing a voice. She wasn't thinking about demos, contracts, or the industry buzz that had erupted around a man who didn't even want the spotlight. She wasn't here for music. She was here for him. Lily's letter had arrived, folded neatly inside a floral envelope, with handwriting too careful to be anything but a child's. Isabella had read it 3 times before her hands stopped shaking. Then she'd packed a bag, canceled her meetings, and driven straight through the night. Not because she had a plan, but because she couldn't not come back. The morning sun was just beginning to cut through the clouds when she pulled into the gravel drive outside Adams' Auto. The garage door was half open, and she could hear the clink of tools and the low hum of a country song bleeding from the radio. A familiar scene, but her heart was anything but steady. She stepped out of the car, brushing her coat straight. For the first time, in a long time, she didn't feel composed. She felt human, vulnerable, hopeful. Michael emerged from beneath the hood of a pickup, wiping his hands on a rag. His hair was a little messier, his beard slightly longer. But the moment he looked up and saw her standing there, time seemed to pause. He froze. Their eyes met across the gravel and the distance of everything unsaid. "You're back," he said finally, the words rough, like they'd scraped their way out. Isabella nodded. "I got a letter. From someone who told me the truth." A flicker of something passed across his face: guilt, surprise, maybe even relief. "I'm not here to talk about music," she added gently. "I'm here because I miss the guy who sang beside his daughter like the world was small enough to hold in one song. I'm here because I miss you." Michael looked at her for a long time, the rag still clenched in his hand, his chest rising slowly. Then he whispered, "I've been waiting for you." The rain had passed by afternoon, leaving the air crisp and clean, the kind of fresh that made the whole town feel reborn. The scent of damp asphalt lingered, mixing with the familiar perfume of motor oil and pine-scented air fresheners inside the garage. Michael stood at the workbench, organizing sockets he didn't need to organize, trying to quiet the nervous rhythm in his chest. He kept glancing at the door, half expecting Isabella to vanish again. Like maybe he'd imagined her showing up that morning with her steady voice and her eyes full of unfinished sentences. But she hadn't left. She was here still, and now she stood in the middle of his garage, brushing rain from her sleeves, her gaze sweeping across the space like she was trying to memorize every corner. "This place hasn't changed," she said, a soft smile playing on her lips. Michael shrugged. "It never does." She walked slowly to the corner where Lily's tiny practice microphone still leaned against a milk crate, the pink handle faded but still sparkling faintly in the light. "Do you still have the piano?" she asked, glancing at him. He nodded toward the back room. Didn't have the heart to get rid of it. Isabella followed him through the doorway, into the cramped storage space, turned studio they'd set up during their first week of recording. The upright piano still sat under its dusty cover, flanked by string lights Lily had hung up for ambience. Michael pulled off the cover, revealing the worn ivory keys beneath. He ran his fingers across them gently, like saying hello to an old friend. Isabella didn't speak. She just sat beside him on the bench, close enough to feel the warmth between them, far enough not to rush whatever this was. Michael took a breath, placed his fingers on the keys, and began to play. Not a full song, not something rehearsed, just a soft, searching melody that filled the garage with something tender and familiar. Isabella joined in after a momentuming, not singing, just adding harmony, the way only someone who knew a person could. No cameras, no producers, no pressure. Just two people, a piano, and the music that had never really left. A reunion not just of voices but of hearts finding their way back to where it all began. The melody hung in the air like a question neither of them needed to answer out loud. Michael's fingers moved with quiet confidence over the keys, drawing out a tune both new and familiar, like it had been waiting patiently in the corners of the garage for the right moment to return. Isabella sat beside him, not as a producer or a guest, but as someone home. She didn't need to direct him, didn't need to shape the sound. Instead, she let herself be shaped by it, leaning into the moment with the kind of trust she'd rarely given to anyone. In this garage, this sacred little corner of oil stains and string lights everything felt stripped down and honest. Michael looked over at her. "You remember the words to that second demo we did?" Isabella smiled, slow and warm. "I've had it on repeat in my head since the day I left." He played the opening notes, and without another word they began to sing. Their voices blended the way only voices born of contrast could. His, gravel and grit, hers, smooth with a thread of steel beneath. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't polished, but it was true. Every lyric, every breath between lines, every glance they exchanged spoke of what had been lost and what still might be found. There was no audience, no red blinking light recording them. Just the hum of the old shop heater and the faint scent of grease and rain, but if the world could have heard them just then, it might have understood something. Music wasn't about fame or contracts. It was about connection. When the final note faded, Isabella leaned back slightly, eyes still closed, a soft exhale escaping her lips. Michael didn't move right away, just let his fingers rest on the keys. "That," she said quietly, "felt like a beginning." Michael turned to her, his expression open in a way it hadn't been since the night they first met. "Feels like maybe we get another shot." "Second chances?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah, and maybe not just with music." They didn't kiss. Not yet, but when she reached for his hand, he didn't hesitate. This time, neither of them would walk away. The sun hung low over Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the garage floor as Michael stood at the workbench, pen in hand, staring down at a single sheet of paper that had once felt impossible. It wasn't flashy, no big label logos, no fine print riddled with traps. Just a modest agreement tone that had taken weeks of quiet negotiation, phone calls, and long talks under string lights in the back room with Isabella. He'd been clear from the beginning. No tours that pulled him away from Lily, no celebrity machine, no rebranding him into someone he wasn't. He'd sing in his own voice, write his own words, and keep recording right here in the garage if he had to. And surprisingly, the label had agreed. Because now, thanks to the viral wave still rippling across the music world, he had the leverage. And Isabella had fought for him every step of the way. Lily watched from the corner, perched on a stool, legs swinging and eyes wide. "Are you really going to sign it?" Michael glanced at her, heart full. "I think I am." She grinned. "So you're officially a rock star now?" He laughed. "More like a dad who sings on weekends and fixes engines on Mondays." He signed his name with a steady hand and passed the paper to Isabella, who leaned against the opposite wall, watching him with quiet pride. "You okay with this?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah, because it's ours, not theirs. I don't need stadiums or spotlights. I just want to make music that means something, and still be the guy who makes Lily pancakes on Saturdays." Isabella smiled. "That's the deal we made." They shook on it, but their hands lingered a second longer than necessary. Later that night, as Michael tucked Lily into bed, she whispered, "Mom would be proud." He swallowed hard, kissed her forehead, and nodded. "I hope so." Downstairs, His guitar waited by the door. A new beginning on his own terms. No noise. No pressure. Just a man, his music, and the promise of peace, wrapped in something even better than fame freedom. The scent of kettle corn and fresh-cut hay floated on the warm evening breeze as the Willow Creek County Fair came to life under strings of glowing bulbs. Children darted between booths, laughter echoing through the air, while the carousel spun slow and sweet in the distance. The main stage, built from old lumber and decades of tradition, stood at the heart of it, all modest, familiar, and waiting. Michael stood behind the curtain, guitar in hand, peeking out at the crowd gathering on hay bales and picnic blankets. No agents, no cameras. Just neighbors, friends, and the kind of small-town magic that felt like home. Lily tugged at his sleeve, dressed in her favorite denim skirt and sparkly sneakers. "You nervous?" she asked. He smiled down at her. "Not a bit. You?" She grinned, missing a front tooth. "I was born for this." Behind them, Isabella adjusted a mic stand, her dark hair swept up, her eyes lit with something that looked a lot like peace. No polished veneer tonight. No press releases or producers lurking nearby, just her, Michael, and Lily. A family made not by blood or fame, but by choice. The MC, a wiry old man named Hank who ran the town's hardware store, announced them with a proud twinkle in his eye. "Next up, we've got a local act some of y'all might recognize. Give it up for Michael, Lily, and Isabella." They stepped onto the stage together to the sound of cheers and warm applause. Michael settled onto a stool, guitar resting comfortably in his hands. Isabella took her place by the mic, and Lily stood between them, holding her tiny microphone like it was made of gold. The first chord rang out, low and steady. Then Isabella's voice, smooth and sure, filled the air. Michael followed, his harmonies wrapping around hers like a promise. And when Lily sang clear, bright, fearless, the crowd leaned in, spellbound. They didn't sing for charts or headlines. They sang for the porch lights, for second chances, for Anna's memory, and the way Lily beamed every time the three of them made music together. When the final note faded, the applause wasn't deafening, but it was real. And in that moment, Michael realized something simple and profound. This right here was the life he never knew he could still have. Not perfect, not planned, just a new kind of harmony. Born from love, stitched together with music, and carried on the voices of people who chose each other again and again.